That was nice. Thank you. Thank you for all attending this evening. Happy New Year. We want to welcome our new board member, Mr. Wotovich. We are we are commencing now from our work study. We just had a work study on a bond overview and update, and we'll call this regular meeting to order. A roll call.
President Weiner, let the minutes show that all 4 board members are present.
Thank you. We'll have a moment of silence, and we will follow with our Pledge of Allegiance. I will go ahead and move that we approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5.0 is our request to speak to the governing board. We value input from our constituents. This time has been set aside for anyone from the audience who wishes to address the board. Please remember this is not an appropriate venue to evaluate, discuss, or criticize district personnel. Policy KEB provides a process for complaints about personnel, and that is online. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to Arizona Revised Statute, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for future consideration. We ask that you limit your remarks to 3 minutes. If you would like to speak, Mrs. Carpenter over here. I am sorry, but we love Mrs. Carpenter. I saw Mrs. Carpenter over holiday break. Mrs. Walker has forms if you'd like to address the board. We have Mr. Alibrandi.
President Whitener, board members, Dr. Birdwell staff, and fellow citizens. First, I'd like to wish everyone a happy new year and express my hope that the board, district, and community can work together to address the challenges of personnel, budget, and growth for the coming year. To this end, I take public note of behavior by our elected officials that would appear to be contrary to this end goal of mutual respect and professionalism. In the interest of time, I'll limit myself to just 3 egregious examples of grandstanding or going rogue. Mr. Hoffman, isn't it true that you began coordinating a visit to the Higley School by Congressman Matt Salmon around September 4th of last year? Isn't it true that you did this directly with the Congressman's office for over a month, did not mention it to your fellow board members, and did not coordinate it with the superintendent or district staff until October 15th? In what professional world does a board member arrange for a visit by a dignitary, skip 2 levels of management, and then task a principal directly with only 2 weeks' notice? As proud as we are of our district, I can't imagine why you would keep this a secret and told no one in district leadership about this in advance. You went rogue. Please do not do this again. Mr. Hoffman has previously noted, isn't it true that on October 27th, just before the last election, you published a seriously flawed article and then a flawed clarification about the financing of the Higley District Middle School leases with the clear intent to smear district leadership? As I pointed out in a detailed 4-page letter to you and the Higley community, you were grossly wrong, and in fact, it appears you didn't even do your own research. You never apologized to that governing board, the district staff, or the community for your gross errors. When will you do this? My point is this. If you found such a scandalous issue, why didn't you check with our own district legal and finance to ensure that you had the correct understanding of the item before publishing such an inflammatory article? I'm all for freedom of speech, but not for freedom from facts. This only served to embarrass yourself in the district. You went rogue. Please do not do this again. Mr. Hoffman, isn't it true that you and the former Gilbert School Board President Stacy Burke have been conspiring to change the Arizona statute to replace open board seats and working behind the scenes with state legislators? We all know that the current AZ statute is legislator approved, open to the community, and transparent. Why were you working in the shadows to change this? Again, not discussing with fellow board members or district leadership, and we were in that situation. Clearly, it's to manipulate the process, as you and Mrs. Burke knew that you could not replace people or members with people you would prefer. I became aware of this late October following the resignation of Mrs. Standish before the election. You went rogue. Please don't do this again. And please stop giving me examples like this to address issues publicly, since you've refused to meet with me privately. I have much better things to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Were there any other members who would like to speak? Members of the community, staff? Thank you. Okay. Are we doing 6.0 before the recognition of the football team? Okay. 6.0, action and information items. Each year, by statute, district school boards need to have an election of governing board officers. I appreciate the time that I was willing to being able to serve this year, and thank you all those who supported me in that. At this time, I would like to, do we need to make a motion to have the election? 6.1, I move that we have the election of governing board officers.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and address the vice presidency seat to fulfill that vacancy that will fulfill that role for presidential when the president cannot fulfill those duties. I would like to nominate Ms. Christina Reese for the position of vice president.
Second the motion.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Or we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Decline?
Oh, aye. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So, do you accept the position?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. For the office of the presidency, we'll go ahead and entertain any motions.
So, President Whitener,
Mr. Hoffman?
is it customary to start with the vice president? Because I was going to actually make a nomination for board member Reese to be president.
It's not in statute, which is first. Forward thinking. If for some reason there was a split vote, at least we would have a vice president, because at this time we do not have a vice president, so there's a vice president who can fulfill that role. Do we have a motion for president?
I make the motion for Vanessa Whitmer.
Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Well, any other nominations?
I'll make a motion to nominate Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you. Sorry, do I need to vote on the first motion first, or take both nominations and then vote sequential?
In practice, we've taken both nominations and then we voted sequentially.
Okay. If there is no second, do we still go ahead and vote?
No, without a second, it dies. So you have a motion on the floor without a second.
Okay. Okay, so Mr. Wojtowicz, motion for myself. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Carries. Oh, is it a nay?
3-0. Yeah, abstain.
Abstain. Mrs. Walker, do we have that?
President Whitener,
Mr. Hoffman.
let me be the first to congratulate Vice President Reese and President Whitener.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. I appreciate that. And for all you football players, that is the most awkward thing ever. And we have to do it every year. And it's very difficult there's 4 board members. Personally, I would have liked to wait until our 5th board member by statute by January 15th. That election needs to be held. But just want you to know, yes, it's very awkward. And then everyone goes and watches the meeting and see how awkward it is. But I appreciate those and appreciate the continued support.
Well, Ms. Whitener, on behalf of the Cabinet, congratulations to both you and Ms. Reese, and again, new members of the board. The Cabinet is here to serve you, and we look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. Okay, now we will go ahead and move into Superintendent's report. And we have some not so awkward but exciting things to celebrate.
Move to the most exciting part of, and it's not because it's a superintendent, it's because we get to bring students forward and recognize great achievements. And Dr. Fowler is going to come up here in a moment, but as he makes his way to the podium, let me just say again how proud we are of Coach Campbell and his team and how exciting it was to be at the playoffs. And young gentlemen, you make us all very, very proud, and your coach proud. And again, year after year, you are stellar young men in our community. So thank you for all that you do for our schools and for our community.
President Whitener, members of the Governing Board, Dr. Birdwell, and Cabinet. It's my pleasure to introduce tonight Coach Campbell and this year's runner-up for the Division III State Football Championships, the Williamsfield Blackhawks. Please come forward. We're going to have a picture with the board. Come forward, please.
It's great to see you.
Well, year after year, Williamsville High School football program makes us very, very proud, and we've heard it from the mayor and others, and certainly, again, this season. And if you couldn't make the game, it truly was exciting. They never gave up anywhere along the process. So, a great program that draws families and students to our schools, and Coach Campbell is just a tremendous role model, and we appreciate all that he does. Up and coming, we do have a holiday coming up, January 19th, Martin Luther King Day. And schools are closed during that time. The East Valley School Board's Consortium Dinner is going to be sponsored by the Gilbert Public Schools this time. So hopefully you can make that on January 26th. And the new university coming into our area, Xavier University, will be speaking, and we get an idea of what their programs are about for both undergraduate and graduate studies. And then we have our work study come up on the 27th and our board meeting following. And thank you again. Today we recognized our business partners, and we had 50 or so business partners that we were able to thank, and Ms. Reese, one of those. So we appreciate our community, and we know it was just a 10% of the business partners that we have that were able to make it. But for those that were there, board, thank you for being there. I thought it was a little extra special to be able to have you there thanking them, and I know they really appreciated it and noticed that difference. So I know it's tough on a day like today. We started you off bright and early, and then we keep you here late. So thanks for your dedication.
Just go ahead into board comments, and I thank all of you guys, all of us, for being there this morning. It was good to have everyone there. After a winter break, are there any other board comments? Everything seemed to go smoothly day one. Ms. Reese?
I was fortunate enough to attend the academic decathlon this last weekend. I have to say it was my first academic decathlon that I've attended. Higley and Williamsfield were both there. Higley did a little better than Williamsfield, but that's okay. We represented well, and it was fun to be at Campo and see that. So I learned a lot, and I really enjoyed being there for that.
Thank you.
President Whitener.
Mr. Hoffman.
So I would just like to say that to Mr. Alberini's comments, I am proud to be attempting to show off this district and the exceptional work of site leaders like Principal Diab and her incredible team at Sossaman, to folks like Congressman Matt Salmon. He is a very important guy and a very critical guy in Washington on education policy. And so I am excited to be a part of both his Education Advisory Council and trying to bring him on site. Unfortunately, due to his schedule, he wasn't able to make it, but nonetheless, I think that's a very good thing when we have congressmen visiting our school campuses. I'm also proud of my advocacy efforts for common sense government and for the students, the teachers, the citizens of Arizona. So I have absolutely no problem with Mr. Alberini sharing either of those things with the world or with the community.
Thank you. Any other board comments? If I may, just as an update for the community and for our meeting minutes, that the 5th board member nomination process has moved forward. There is this same timeline that is online, but the seminar will be January 31st, and Mr. Covey will approve a nomination February 5th, and we hope to have a 5th board member in shortly after February.
Yes, and I should have added to my superintendent comments. Board, you'll start receiving the legislative updates because we are now in legislative session. And as we get those from your association, Arizona School Board Association, I'll send those and forward them to you. And those have just begun this week with Janice Palmer, and I'll condense those into shorter versions that make sense and not some of the added comments that are unnecessary. So we'll make sure you start receiving those on a weekly basis.
Thank you. Okay, 8.0 consent agenda items.
President Whitener,
Mr. Hoffman,
I will make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
second. Oh, Ms. Reese, second. Is there any discussion on particular items? And always, Mr. Ratovich, if there is a particular consent agenda item that you have a question on, we can always pull that separately as we approve the agenda if you would like a separate vote. Sorry. We will have some of those training moments hopefully here soon. But just as an FYI. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, there is no old business at this time at 9.0. We move to 10.0, action information items. 10.0, I move that we approve the 2014 annual financial report revision.
I'll second that.
Okay, with the second, allows for discussion or questions or any specific presentation at this time.
As you know, my name is Laura Smith. I'm the financial consultant. In September, I brought to the board the annual financial report for the year that ends on June 30th, 2014. It has a statute that it must be uploaded to ADE by the middle of October. That's why I brought it to you in September. And at the time, I explained to the board that I would be bringing it back. Dr. Birdwell brought our firm on, I think I started about the end of May when I came into the district office. There's a lot of finances that go on after June 30th. It takes us about 60 days to close out the year and another 30 days to submit completion reports for our grants. The district is a steward of the public's money, and we have to watch for every penny. We compiled our expenses and our revenues, but for fiscal year 2012 and fiscal year 2013, two of the district's major audit hits involved capital assets. It's what you buy with your capital money for items that cost a certain amount. They all have to be tagged. You have to be able to locate them. Those had not been reconciled. And the first year you received a significant deficiency for it, and on the second year for the same item it became a material weakness. So one of our goals, even though we were brought on late, was to correct both of these items. So we have the best guy in the state that does capital assets. That was cleared out. We have our draft findings for FY14, which I will bring to the board once they're official. And they found if I recall, a 1990 pickup truck that was disposed of that we couldn't find on the property listing. In the years before, it was millions of dollars that had not been reconciled. The other major finding was your cash has not been reconciled for a few years. And basically what that means is the treasurer keeps our cash, but we have to do all the journal entries. Like we have TANs, tax anticipated notes, that cover our cash while we wait for property taxes to be collected. And we go through about $7.5 million. And in prior years, they had not done that. It was correct at the county, but it hadn't been booked on our ledgers correctly. So all those have been done. And then at the last minute, by the time we cleared out everything, it basically wiped about $995,000 off of our carry forward. So we're back down to the original proposed budget. And so when we do a budget revision, we'll be reducing our budget due to these other charges that hadn't been hit on our ledger. So the cash is now correct. You'll move forward with clean books. And this sheet that you were given with every cell that has to change, this is what I have to submit to ADE, and they have to grant us permission to upload this. So I need board permission to upload it, and then I need ADE to say it's good to go. They archive our old AFR.
So, Laura, do you know what our cash carry forward is?
Exactly, yes.
What is it now?
Oh, you want it by fund or what?
Just the aggregate.
All right.
You said it was reduced by like 950.
In M&O, yes, sir. The cash carry forward for all funds. $30,642,550.15 across all funds. So,
You said 3 million?
no, 30 million. 30 million. This is grants. This is capital assets.
Oh, okay.
This is the cash for M&O. The carry forward in M&O is $293,184.67.
Does that M&O number reflect tax credits?
The tax credit accounts, yes, that would be included in there. It's all funds. Mr. Hoffman asked me for all funds. That would be the total that we carry forward.
Was the 950, was that spread throughout multiple funds, or was that?
No, the 995,000 is M&O alone. We had tax apportionments that hadn't been booked. We had some journal entries that were done twice. We had some negative interest that we had in grants because your grants are run on a reimbursable basis. So we pay, then we submit reports, they send money. So technically you're borrowing money from that fund. So we pay for that from our M&O. So that interest has to be moved out of the grant for that. So it was unfortunate. The good news is we had the money to cover it. The district is now totally compliant. The auditors will come in and you have everything right down to the penny, and you're starting off clean.
Well, that is certainly good news, but as you said, it is unfortunate that
It is, but we're watching everything. This is only the second time I've ever worn red to a budget meeting, so it's to let you know we're very serious about watching every penny you have. We have our reconciling is now done monthly. This year, I suspect they could give us an audit hit for not reconciling in a timely manner. And also, I will say 2 years ago, although 3 years ago you didn't get hit for not reconciling, you had a long list of reconciling items. So it has tediously been gone through and hit here, hit there, hit here, hit there.
So as we stand today, there's nothing left to reconcile on the list.
That's correct. It's not only current through last year, it's current to this day. We're waiting for the December. November is done. And December, we're doing a pass-off. So your Isabel Colas will be doing your reconciliation. She's done it in her other district. It was one of the benefits of hiring her. She's very good at that. So, and we also have a relationship with the county now. So they know we're doing that.
That was the question I had kind of alluded to. What would have been the appropriate time frame to have this all finalized?
As far as AFR, as far as cash reconciliation. Mm-hmm. Cash reconciliation, you normally are running 2 months behind. It just sort of happens that way. But if you go directly to the treasurer, which is what we are doing now, you can do the following month. Okay. We actually had such a good working relationship with the county. We had some live transactions going on. They actually came to the district at the end of December so that we could do those final adjustments. It's hard to reconcile when you have a list this long of items you're looking for and hitting them in and out. So they were here and they could make the direct hit on the treasurers.
So will reconciling directly with the treasurer become the new SOP for us?
It is and has been. So before, the district waited for the county to, the audit requirement is you can either reconcile directly to the treasurer, or if your county school superintendent's office reconciles to the treasurer, you can then reconcile to the county school superintendent's office. I always recommend going straight to the treasurer. So that is what we're doing now, and then we do journal entries for any corrections and send it right to the county.
And is there any support that the board can provide to ensure that we continue to reconcile in that manner?
It's something that goes on behind the scenes, and it's a fair question for you to ask your finance director is, are you reconciled? And especially, there may be a month where you're off for, it's a big budget month or something, but we have it in place where we will have one person doing it for sure, and a second person will be up and trained. It's just a critical thing, but it's something no one really sees. It's probably nothing you ever asked about. But when we get our audit finding, I will bring it to the board, and I'll be responsible for anything that's wrong. And it's something for you to monitor, because I doubt that you were aware that you had not reconciled cash for 3 or 4 years.
Human Resources addressing the personnel issues that are related to this, as this should have been corrected, had been addressed, was not corrected. The last time Laura's firm was in the district, we balanced to the T. And unfortunately, from the time they left to current, the individual who was assigned that did not do that job, and the CFOs did not hold the individual accountable, and Human Resources will be investigating why. Unacceptable. But we're really happy that it was caught and corrected, and that the district did not end up in the hole over it. But that was one of the fears we had and why we brought their company in.
What was the, Dr. Birdwell, what was the cost to get this corrected?
Jean's salary?
I can bring that to the board. I would rather have the exact amount.
But ballpark is fine. I mean, I'm just curious, because, I mean...
$75,000?
About a $75,000 cost to correct an employee's functions.
I was going to put on a future agenda item, but looks like it's moving forward.
Okay. Any comments, questions? Anybody want to learn how to reconcile to the treasurer? Yeah, to the penny? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
So that was a motion. With the second, we'll go ahead and need to have a vote. All those who approve the 2014 annual financials report revision. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sadly, aye.
Thank you. Okay, 10.2 is our monthly financial report.
President Whitener,
Mr. Hoffman.
I'd just like to express my gratitude to Laura again for that we're getting this every month. Thank you very much.
With these reports, does that address any of the previous action item? I mean, if we're getting these reports, I mean, would that be signaling that all those other things are being reconciled as well, or is that just something you? Okay.
No,
so
those reports I give you are our budget reports. The M&O budget was increased to what you approved in December. If you recall, we upped that a little bit more than we're going to lose. So the budget amounts are updated. I cannot change budgets. The board has to approve any budget change. So as you look at those, the next one will bring the cash forward. If you notice at the bottom of all your summary of operations, it says BCB, that'd be balance carry, but beginning cash balance is current for the 14. Now we had to make a couple last minute adjustments because we were overexpended in food service due to some hits that needed to be put on the general ledger. So the budget will remain the same until I bring your second budget revision. But know that I realize we're going to shave off $900,000. And your beginning cash balances are going to change because I just rolled the cash. As soon as you give me your blessing, I will roll the cash. So those will change.
So Laura, Dr.
Yes.
Birdwell, just quickly while we're on this monthly financial report, what operational impact will that loss in the M&O carry forward. Is that going to affect us this year, and how?
No, it's going to affect us as far as the bottom dollar is, because we had hoped to carry forward money to look at next year's reductions, and that's going to be reduced. So what we're going to do is look at the spring and talk about how conservative can we be in order to try to then regain some of that loss. So we're looking now at, if we lose an employee at this time, is that position critical to replace, or can we move people around to address those, whether it's a classroom aide or an employee at the district office. So we're looking at some of those pieces to recover as much M&O as we can. If you haven't spent your budget at this point, you're not going to spend that budget at this point. So but by now you should have ordered what you needed. And that doesn't mean that we will not allow for paper for testing and things like that, but we will be working closely with the must-have versus the I want moments. And so we get very conservative, but this is also typical practice, and Laura and I talked about it, that in every district she's in right now, everybody's going, okay, tighten it up, because we're trying to carry as much forward as we can for the next fiscal year.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 10.3, we have first reads on policy BEC, executive sessions and open meetings. You see the highlighted in blue, the change or addition.
There was an opportunity, a legal opportunity to shift a policy that allows the governing board, if you know that you're going to have a meeting, the next meeting is going to go into an executive session, to be able to call for it and then go right into an executive session at that next meeting, so that conserve time and movement of coming in and out of the executive, call the order, come back in. And so this was to streamline for the operation of businesses, and to give you the option was to add it to the policy. If you use it, it's up to you, but then it's there if you choose to use it.
Thank you. If there's any further questions, maybe you can email staff or Ms. Good. 10.4 is a first read. Regulation IKE-RD, promotion and retention of students.
Members of the board, just a brief explanation. The move on when reading legislation says that third graders may not be promoted if they're the falls far below level on the state tests. Well, in the past, we've gotten those scores back in time to make that decision before the end of the school year. Due to the change in the state tests for this coming year, we're being informed that those results will not be back until fall. So there's no way to use that information for promotion or retention. What this addition to the policy says is that if the scores are not back in time, you can't use it. We just want to clarify that, because that is indeed the case for this coming school year. If it happens again in the future, that paragraph will be in the policy. If the scores come back in time as they have in the past, then we would follow the procedures as they're written.
President Whitener.
Mr. Hoffman.
Dr. Nance, I know that you're not our attorney, Linda Good, but I saw some statutory references new in this policy that were blue for us, and I'm wondering, is this just straight out of statute? Is this allowance out of statute? Do you know?
I don't know the answer to that, Mr. Hoffman.
If you go ahead and email the board that question or answer. Thank you. 10.5, we have an information item on the AZ merit testing. And is that Dr. McCauley?
Good evening, President Whitener, members of the board. I'm just waiting for the presentation to come up. As you know, we have a new assessment coming online this year to replace AIMS. Even though we will be running AIMS for the high school juniors and seniors who still need it for graduation, we're doing that. We're also going with our AZ Merit this year. I have a thumb. What? A thumb drive? No, we emailed it. Okay. Okay, so
there is no AIMS this spring for K-8?
There is AIMS Science for grades 4, 8, and high school, 9th or 10th graders. So science, I did speak. Science is sticking around for another 3 years under AIMS. It's going to be when the State Department adopts the new science standards that they'll select a test for that. So that's that. Done. No, I'm kidding. I was tempted to fill out a card and do it in 3 minutes, be first one. Okay, so here we go. Computer-based assessment. So the ADE actually developed a tool, a school speed test, they call it. And what it does is it measures our ability to upload and download information from the outside, which is your broadband. And so we tested all of our schools, and all of our schools actually passed the speed test and were deemed tech ready by the state. So yay. I'm going to save a lot of paper. Okay, so on the slide that's not up there yet, who else appears to be ready? Dr. Nance did an informal survey of other districts around the state, and we've got Deer Valley, the bulk of their schools are doing it online. Tempe Union, all of their high schools. Mesa, they're getting as many done as they possibly can, which is the majority of their schools, 53 of the 56 elementary, 9 out of the 10 middle schools, and 2 of 7 high schools. The only one that's really far off from us is Chandler. They're only testing 2 of their schools online, and one of them is actually an online school, and the other one is one of their elementaries. Okay.
So is it just an option strategically? Are people thinking you might not do as well the first time you take this test online?
Well, the future of testing is going to be online testing, and so it was a choice of the districts to be able to choose whether they wanted to go paper and pen or when they do online. And honestly, when we got done with multiple hours of discussions and debates and hardware and software folks talking and ed services, if we're going to end up with an online test, we might as well start getting our kids prepared for that now and give them the test of the future so that we can really test not only our students and are they ready for that, but also how are we doing? Are we ready? And what are our faults in this process? One of the issues that we faced were calculators, for instance. And so have kids used online calculators versus calculators in front of them? So our kids will have both. They can have the online calculator in front of them, and they'll have a calculator sitting next to them, so that what we didn't want to do is disadvantage any of our students in the testing process and yet prepare for the future. So we chose to go completely online, and speaking to the state this week, they're very interested to see what we discover in the process. And hopefully we'll troubleshoot a lot of issues for them.
I don't know why this keeps advancing on me. Sorry. Did you guys get to see that slide? Does anybody else want to operate this one? I got a shaky thumb. Thank you. I really do. I'm clumsy. Okay, so there you have it. Okay, so what is the window? The window is March 30th through May 8th for computer-based testing, with caveat that you have to complete writing by April 24th because it takes longer to grade them. Okay, so what's tested? Grades 3 through 8, writing, reading, and math. For high school, what they're calling these end-of-course assessments, and they will test English in grades 9, 10, 11, and then Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. So here's what the middle school issue is that other people in the state are a little upset about. If they have to take their grade level math test, but if they're enrolled in Algebra or Geometry, they also have to take that. So it's good data, but they want to know that they are on track in 8th grade and whether or not they met the standards in the course they took. The time estimates, it's about 6.8 hours if you use the maximum estimates the state has issued. And Based on capacity at each of our sites, feasibly, our elementaries could get it done in 12 days. Middle school in 18 to 20 and high school 18 to 20. I would expect, though, the middle and high schools to use almost the entire window just because makeups, kids who are out, they'll have fewer kids testing at the end of the window, but they will probably be utilizing it. So, test scheduling, as you can imagine, is going to be complicated and very specific to each site's nuances. For that reason, I cannot do the actual scheduling from the district vantage point. So the schedules will be created at the sites. Assistant principals will be working on those to make sure everything's scheduled and coordinating from that site as they usually do, making sure all the rooms are prepared and the tests are actually scheduled. The testing window is 6 weeks, but individual students will complete testing in 3 to 4 days, either consecutively or non-consecutively. That's site-specific. Okay. Oh, go back one. See, it's not so easy. I just rubbed that thing and something.
Go ahead and move. Oh, there we go.
All right, calculators. So here is the calculator. 7th and 8th grade students get to use a calculator on part 2 of the math test. But the calculator cannot exceed the basic operations of what's equivalent to the Texas Instrument 30 model. And then high schools may use calculators equivalent to the TI 84, but they cannot have a computer algebra system on board, and if it is, it has to be deactivated. We have to disable infrared communication from one device to another, and all the other stuff. I can't remember. No disposable. Oh, we have to disable storage, and then we're not required to provide calculators if you're giving the paper and pencil version of the test, but those students who don't have a calculator and they're not provided one will take a test without a calculator. And you could probably do that in algebra and geometry. It gets a little bit harder with algebra 2. So online we'll have an inbuilt calculator. And did you want to add anything to the calculator?
Yeah, I am going to. And this was a really heavy debate that we were having because some of our classes have calculators, some of them don't have calculators. And so then we checked with the neighbors, and the neighbors were all buying calculators, and they're working with the kids on it. So yes, we jumped in with the rest of the world and we got calculators to make sure that no child would sit before the test without a calculator in front of them. And then over the next 3 months, the math instructional coaches are working with the teachers on making sure the students have had access, that they've used the calculators, they've been exposed to both online and the calculators in front of them. And, it's interesting because when you talk about the middle school, to some degree you're taking them backwards in time. At T130, most kids probably will look at that and say, really, is this all it does? Because it is very simple. It's a $10 calculator, and in comparison to what the kids are used to having, because most of them have T184s. But then we have a percentage of our population that don't have calculators at all. So we will make sure that every child has been exposed, had the experience over the next 3 months of using calculators, and that they will be sitting with them at the test. If they choose to use them, that's up to the student, but we don't want to disadvantage our students in comparison to what Mesa and Chandler and everybody else was doing.
So quick question on that. Because it says that calculators are provided within the assessment for computer-based assessments. So are those not adequate? Is that why?
Well, the concern was that our students haven't been exposed to online calculators, and so that there may be we don't know the results, and in trying to dig into, has anybody looked at any research of, is there an advantage versus one versus the other? It's more about what we do know about test exposure. And when a student is taking a new test for the first time and all of a sudden they're using something they've never used, like an online calculator, they tend not to do as well at the first exposure. So we wanted to make sure that there wasn't a disadvantage for the fact that they've just not been accustomed to using online calculators.
So they're going to have both then? Okay.
They are. And then as we go forward in the future, the idea is to make sure that we are truly integrating the use of calculators in our math, and then we don't rely on, if a student doesn't have a calculator, you check one out from the teacher because you have a classroom set and make sure we're using them. So then you don't have any problem with the disadvantaged students.
So the Research and Assessment Department will be working with IT and educational services to finalize detailed lines of responsibility at the sites. But we know for sure assistant principals are establishing the schedule and doing the day-to-day coordination of these assessments this year for their sites. So that was on my feeling positive day. I threw that one in. The glass was half full. Okay, so test items. ADE is working with the American Institute for Research, AIR, to develop AZ Merit. It's a uniquely Arizona test, that's the language they used, that measures Arizona standards. Arizona educators are responsible for the creation, implementation, and continued development of AZ Merit, ensuring that the test is aligned with Arizona values and standards. So they will be able to draw some comparisons because embedded in the AZ Merit test will be items from other comparable assessments, like the PISA, for example, or other smarter balanced items, and then those will be normed on those items alone. And just like we see with the SAT-10 reports, you'll see an embedded percentile rank score for each student and how they performed on those items compared to the other students in our comparison states, others to come possibly. So we do get that national comparison. The bulk of the test will be, though, Arizona comparisons. So how might we fare in this? Well, if we perform as other states have, and I was able to pull an example from Utah, we can expect about 30 to 40% drop in passing. And there's that example. Here's our projected results in reading across all grade levels.
Now, will they, sorry for interrupting, will they do different results? They will say, here's results for paper testing and here's results for online testing.
That has, they're going to norm
relayed to your AIR people. Those results should be separated or categorized differently.
Yeah, they're going to know a lot from this first. Just the calculator issue alone may skew some of the norming they do because you got cultural bias if you've got a rural group of kids who don't have access to calculators, whereas you've got your suburban populations that do. So the norming will all get sorted out this summer. Okay, so we will still be higher than the state and the county. These are pulled from the College and Career Readiness Target Scale scores that the state developed in anticipation of the new assessment. Okay, so what about accountability? How are they going to hold us accountable? We're not sure. Lots of legislation has to happen first. So we should know sometime in the spring, including whether or not the state will go back out for an extension on the ESEA waiver, which is good through the end of this fiscal year. But they have to apply in March to extend it into the next.
So when we met with the State Board of Education representative met with the Arizona School Administrators Association this week, and a couple topics that came out of that. One is, will the A to F labels be used next year? And right now they're predicting probably a 2-year freeze. Good for Higley, we get to stay number 1 for the next 2 years. Good for statistics because quite honestly we have too many variables that we're dealing with and we have to look at those. And so there's some issues there. Second to that, there was a large discussion that occurred at the state level about will the standards remain the standards? And we have a opportunity to hear the governor, and I know Ms. Reese plans to attend tomorrow with the chamber to hear the governor's perspective on that. But if the standards change, then the testing that was given this year will be different than the testing next year, so then you don't have a norming that's going on. You've got actually two completely different tests. So there's a lot of changes going on legislatively that we really just need to ride the wave and be prepared for that. And that's why I'm not too concerned. I think we test the systems and we don't get real excited about the results. Too many variables at this moment. But of course, we always care about the results. But in reality, we may take a completely different test a year from now or 2 years from now. So there's some significant issues with that. And as I've said before, I wish they would have just postponed the test and not spent the money until we resolve the other issues that are curricularly related and standards related. So we'll see what the future brings. But just know that this is kind of that moving target moment again in Arizona.
Yep. So what are our next steps? Well, communicate information about the new assessment to the governing board. Check. Parents, students, and staff. They've retitled. They don't call us the district test coordinator anymore. It's now the Achievement Testing District Test Coordinator. And we have mandatory training at the end of the month. I get to take one person with me. And John Dolan was the lucky winner of that prize. Assistant principals will have a mandatory training after I receive mine, and then they'll turn around and train the teachers how to administer the test, and then we just have to establish our assessment schedules. Also, there will be practice tests online. They still are they're still pending. We've got to train the teachers in the use of the online calculators, then teach students how to use them as well. Administer the assessments, then wait for the results that are supposed to be in September, and that's why my fingers are crossed.
And so if you're doing paper testing, you don't have to go to those trainings, you don't have to worry about
No, you still have to go to the trainings.
Okay.
No, everybody gets trained on the test.
Yeah.
And it comes with its rules and regulations and thou shall not.
So how do they hold you accountable? How does ADE hold you accountable that you're going to the trainings and that you're...
Yeah.
No, there's a sign-in. There's a sign-in that goes in that Higley has approved trainers, and then we have to have people sign off that they've been trained, and then there's a sign-off sheet for the teachers about confidentiality and not sharing of information and not cheating on the test, etc., all of those things that they hold us accountable on. Mm-hmm. And it requires signatures. And quite honestly, if you break any of those, you can lose your license over it.
Yeah, we all sign whatever the name of that thing is, the test security agreements, and encompassed in that is the training is one of the bullets in there. You've acknowledging you've been trained, you've participated in training, and your signature to that is the accountability. I have to keep those for 5 years at the district office for teachers. The state keeps ours up at the state for 5 years, and then the sites always keep a copy for just in case.
And just to give you a little clarity on that, whether it was the Ames or the new one, there's a protocol, and each year Anna has had to make a phone call to the State Department and say, I've had a student who took out a book, or had a student who took out a calculator during a test, or I had a student who walked out with their test out of the testing room, and we have to turn that student in, and then they determine whether or not, based on the facts of the findings, whether or not that test is a null and void. And so and the same thing with teachers. We've had to have teachers investigated and reported, and so they have to follow the protocol, including the restroom breaks. I mean, you cannot break the protocol without us causing an investigation.
Yep, and I have to actually tell them the training happened, they signed to it, all of that, when it's a teacher investigation.
So maybe after the training, we can just get a brief update of what it's like, so we can understand what the teachers are going through and parents and things like that. But my only concern with this is that we don't over stress it.
No, absolutely.
I mean, I don't want our kids kind of just over stressing that. I just, it's just the pilot. Let's just.
Well, it's not a pilot.
Well,
it's the scores will count for something. So it's still to be taken.
It'll be the first time.
It'll be the first time. It might be a hot mess,
but I don't want.
Might count for something. So.
I don't want to lose teaching time,
No.
valuable teaching time over having kids, practice and going to the computer labs and practicing having the practice at home. And
They already do that. It's called the Galileo assessment. So,
yes.
Our kids are somewhat accustomed to online. They just have new calculators online and things like that the kids haven't seen. So we're not taking lots of practice time to prepare for testing. It's, like I said, part of doing this is to find out what we're prepared for and what we're not prepared for. That's us learning on ourselves as well. So one of the communication pieces that Anna stressed is that we're going to communicate with parents. We want a parent to know if you get a third grade student at Coronado, this is their testing days, so that the parent understands that, there's this 18-day window, but your student is only being tested on these particular dates and times, and then there's a makeup opportunity so that they know what that is. We don't want parents to think for 18 days their kids are sitting for tests.
And we have some information loaded. Michelle Reese is actually going to put a live link directly to the AZ Merit site. That way, if I can't keep up on these links changing, because dead links happen, they can go directly to the source. And this is just more targeted too, so they don't have to sift through and go through 10,000 clicks to find the one thing they were looking for. This is the more targeted toward parents. Final thoughts. I got nothing. No, I'm kidding.
Thank you.
It actually looks, I've looked at a couple of the webinars on the administration and the ease of use, and it looks a lot easier than the park. For me personally, it was than what we went through last spring, but there's been more time.
We'll just let it come. Thank you. Okay, we have another information item, 10.6, athletic fees, and Dr. Fowler.
President Whitener, members of the governing board, Dr. Birdwell, cabinet. Just want to take a little bit of time and talk about the athletic budget, most specifically related to participation fees. Let me see if I can get this to work. Oh, I think I got it. First, I just want to start with a comparison in terms of the high school East Valley comparison, and just listing on there where Higley lies in comparison to some of our neighboring districts in terms of what we're currently paying for participation fees. And you'll see that we fall on the low end of the scale in terms of comparisons with our neighbors. Also, including there for you is a junior high comparison, with really Chandler being the only one that's less than what we currently charge. There's some differences in terms of a max per family. Some districts have a max, some do not, but there's the two comparisons there. Looking at our athletic budgets, and I gave you, this is a very general overview. I'm going to get a little bit more specific as I look at this current year, but over the last 3 years, you'll notice quite a reduction, especially going back to 2012-13 in terms of our expenditures as it relates to athletics. I want to just bring to your attention one of the biggest differences was when we went from the K-8 model to the middle school model that we currently have. We had athletes participating in the 7th and 8th grade at each of those sites, with coaches and officials and transportation, and you'll see the difference in costs reflected in that. And for the most part, the other costs have remained relatively the same, but there are some increases and differences. Most of the increases in the reflected budget for 14-15 just have to do with increases in officials' costs and some of the other expenses related to that. Looking specifically at this year's middle school budget, just a quick breakdown on what that looks like. The cost for our two middle schools to have athletics is just under $80,000. beginning with our fee to be in the East Valley Conference, which really is the premier conference in the state, where we compete with the best middle schools in Chandler and Queen Creek. And as you noted, of late we've had some success and been able to recognize some of our teams that have won, and we'll have some more coming back. Our largest expenditure is the coaching stipends, and these are predominantly our teachers, either at the middle schools and or also at some of our other schools that come to work with the athletes, and that's a large amount of the money that we expend for middle school, but also officials and transportation, and then there's some other incidental expenses there. High school expenses, going the wrong way there. Lot more involved in a bigger operation, 20 sports at each of the high schools. But just to give you a sense of our overview, beginning with athletic fees to the cost of trainers. Again, coaching stipends is our largest expenditure for athletics. But then moving through and looking at equipment and all the things, officials, transportation, again, that makes our high schools thrive with the outstanding athletic programs that we're able to offer. And that's currently what we're projecting for this year with our high school expenses. Now, looking at sort of it from a revenue expense side, having showed you the expenses already, this year we're anticipating about $54,000 in revenue coming in for our middle schools. And when you take our participation fees and our tax credit and some other expenditure or some other revenue, it brings us to about $469,000 of revenue that we bring in for athletics. Looking at that, adding the program expenses together, we end up with about $267,000 shortfall, which has been traditionally funded through M&O, and going back as I showed that progress, it's been a much larger hit over the years to M&O, and this amount continues to reduce. As we look forward, my recommendation, as you make considerations for the budget coming up, would be an increase in our participation fees, again showing how low we are in comparison to the other districts. But that $50 increase for our students at the middle and high school level potentially could generate about $100,000. And then looking at that budget line there, ultimately that would really create a situation where our middle schools are completely self-funded based on the revenue and tax credit that they bring in, and then it would increase the revenue at the high school level, and it really put us at a situation where we're getting much closer to athletics being completely self-funded, but we're still looking at about $180,000 shortfall. But again, that's substantially improved from even 3 or 4 years ago. At this time, I will answer any questions that you have.
Dr. Fowler, is an $80,000 increase? I believe that was tax credits on the last slide. The projection, is that what that plus 80,000 is?
The $100,000 increase would be my recommendation, and this is just an estimate. But if the participation fee went up for middle school and high school, just a conservative estimate would be about a $100,000 increase, and so that is just reflecting about 20,000 of that would be for middle school and about 80,000 would be for high school. And
does that 20 and 80,000, do they have to stay respectively in middle school and high school, or is that all one athletic fund?
It typically it goes into middle school.
It depends on the funds. And so if the fee is considered part of the tax credit, it must remain with the school in which it's received.
Right. I'm just looking at this, and it's 74,000 on the middle school revenue plus the projected 20,000, right? The estimated.
Well, that is including that. So if I show you this one, so right now we're at 54. That's probably what we'll bring in. So we're really $20,000 short at the middle school level, and so with that increase, that plus 20 is reflecting. That's why I put the asterisk there. So really, it would take that for us to be self-funded at the middle school level.
Thank you.
Dr. Fowler, do our unified sports, do they have to pay a fee?
Unified at this point does not pay a fee, although we are doing stipends for coaches, and we're really excited about Higley's Unified Sports Program. And so our coaches receive a stipend that is covered through tax credit, and as we continue to grow that program and build that relationship with the AIA, that would be something that we would look to include, and we would bring recommendations if the board felt that was something that we would need to charge for. We could certainly do that as well. But at this point, our coaches' stipends have been covered through the tax credit, and then the additional expenses related to Unified Sports have been covered through our special ed budget.
Thank you. I'm sure we will see you in a couple months.
All right. Thank you very much.
More budget. Sorry, did you have a question?
Can we have this emailed?
Oh, sorry, Dr. Fowler. Can you email the presentation to the board?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Okay, 11.0, we have an executive session. 11.1, I move that we recess into executive session for legal advice concerning a superintendent search process, including general contract provisions as authorized by Arizona Revised Statute 38-401.03A3, and discussion and consideration of recommended applicants as authorized by ARS.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Community, you're welcome to stay, but don't feel obligated to stay. Dr. Birdwell, I don't know if your staff is to stay, but good night to those of you who I may not see when we come back out. (9:27).
What do you resume?
Resuming. There wasn't any action, was there?
No action to be
No.
It was to approve the special meeting.
That's what we're going to do right now. I'm going to, we need to call a special meeting Thursday at 6 p.m., correct?
Correct. January 22nd at 6 p.m.
Are there any other future agenda items?
Do we have to vote on the special meeting?
Yeah, I thought we did.
Because we're making a motion to do it?
That's what I was looking for, because I didn't have it for me. Okay.
So then we need to back up.
That's what I was looking for.
This is entertaining. You're the new guy.
No, that's what I was looking. Okay. 12.2.
So possible actions.
Oh, is he in there?
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
It's okay.
12.1. I move that we resume back into open session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 12.2. Our action concerning 12.1 or 11.1. We need to hold a special meeting Thursday at 6 p.m. Executive session. All those in favor?
Do you want a motion second? I'll move that we hold a special executive session meeting on Thursday, January 22nd at 6 p.m.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 13.0. Were there any future agenda items?
None at this time for me.
Not at this time.
Thank you. I move that we adjourn.
I will second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.